Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. In this video I will give you a complete farming guide for the Ooku run 2022. I wasn't supposed to make this video since, as I said in my previous one, my free time at the moment is pretty limited by my exams, but given the unique nature of this event, with a forced mystic code for the master and the new level 90 plus nodes, it was too interesting to let it pass. Given this uniqueness, there will be a lot of written tips on each setup, so be sure to stop the video and read them carefully if you want to use that specific setup. Furthermore, there will be a lot of unique tips in the first part of this video, so even if you are a veteran of this channel, I highly advise you to not skip ahead to the farming setups. Speaking about those farming setups, as usual, for each farming node I will give you in order hard setup, quick setup, buster setup and then free-to-player setups. Each of them ranked and listed from best to worst. However, this time around I've only listed the best DPS for each car type. For example, the few arts DPS that can kill with MP only at MP1, or the few quick DPS that can run a 6-slot setup, and so on. You should have gotten the idea. This is of course due to my aforementioned limited free time, which will prevent me from giving you a farming guide for the next Lotto event. However, as it's the case for each lottery event, there should be others covering the farming setups, so you should be safe. As soon as I finish my exams, I will be able to return to make the full farming guides. For these reasons, if you find this type of content useful, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to be notified when a new farming guide is out, remember to ring my bell. Don't worry, you'll get at most 2 notifications for each event, one for the farming guide and one for the challenge quest. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only one giving a comprehensive list of optimal farming setups, aside lottery events and raids of course, so you should be interested into at least taking a little peek to the farming setup for each event. It was exactly the lack of a comprehensive list of farming guides for non-lottery events which prompted me into making these videos. Enough with the intro, now let's move on with the actual guide for the Ooku run 2022. I will start with the usual tips that you are familiar with, and then we'll cover the unique aspects of this event. Starting with the event limited Cs, this time around all of them will be useful for farming, aside of course giving the drop bonus. The 3 stars Bronze CE and the 4 stars Silver CE both provide an MP gain buff that will be useful for arts looping and quick looping. The 5 stars Gold Gacha CE provides a starting MP charge from 40 to 50 if max limit broken, which of course is useful for every DPS. Moreover, this C also provides a quick buff, so it can enable some 6-slot quick looping setups. The Shop C, as usual, will provide bonus damage during the event, but also gives a quick and an arts buff, meaning those 2 buffs combined with the overkill provided by the bonus damage will enable some arts and quick 5-slot looping setups. You will see this damage C a lot when we reach the level 90 plus farming nodes. But even for the standards level 90 nodes, you will see this C equipped to DPS like Paracelsus, Avisebron or Voyager. Most of the aforementioned setups will require a maximum broken copy, which you should already have if you have played the original Ooku event, but in any case by completing this event you'll be able to get 5 more copies, so you should safely maximum break it for extra damage and looping consistency. As usual, you should consider more carefully if you want to maximum break the gacha Cs, but just so you know, there will be setups that use a maximum broken copy for each gacha C. For the bronze and silver ones, you'll need the extra MP gain buffs in order to loop, while for the gold one, you'll need the extra MP charge in order to be able to use some DPS with lower MP charge skills. If instead you stick to the most optimal DPS with big MP charge skills, you'll be able to use a base gacha CE with the addition of append skills. Regarding the placement of these event Cs on your supports, as usual, the safe choice is to place your gacha Cs on your support caster in the caster slot and in the all slot. The optimal combination will be Castoria and Skadi, of course, but even Weaver and Merlin works. Otherwise, if you have a Rider, Caster, Assassin, Alter Ego or Berserker DPS that can use a 6-slot setup without double supports, then you can be a good friend and place your gacha C on that one, since getting a specific DPS from supports is way more difficult than getting a universal caster support. You can refer to the last part of this video to know which DPS can be useful, as I will quickly list them all before giving the farming setups for each farming node. Finally, if you want to be a really good friend, you can swap your supports depending on the time gates of the event. But remember that the setups listed in this guide only works for the final best farming nodes that will be available after the last time gate. Moving on to the event bonus servants, I have as usual highlighted in red the ones that will be useful for farming the best free quests, meaning there will be farming setups that use those DPS with a detailed guide for skills usage each turn. In particular, Chiara will be extremely useful during this event, since all the enemies in the best farming nodes are in the 4 Horsemen class, and in those 4 classes Arts DPS are extremely rare. Furthermore, she will get an MP rank up during this event, together with a skill upgrade for Sharazad. Yes, the thick choco, which I have at MP2 by the way. I have also highlighted in a different color Mama Raiko, since as you will see in the next part of this video, on top of being a berserker with an event bonus, she will also almost always get an extra 50% special damage, given that almost all of the enemies in the farming nodes are demonic. For each farming node I will give you the list of DPS with special damage, specifying for how many enemies in that node you will have special damage against, so that if you can't or don't want to use the optimal farming setups listed afterwards, you have at least a starting point for the choice of DPS to use in that specific node. Aside from farming, remember to use these event bonus servants while clearing the main quest, since given the unique nature of this event, with a ludicrous large amount of 1 AP main quests, you will be able to farm bond points very efficiently. It's true even if you consider that you can only bring a party of 3 servants for each main quest. You should be prepared to lose your sanity while exploring this dungeon. Regarding the event command codes, not much to say about them since they don't come up in farming. Just be sure to get them if this is your first time playing this event, since both the 4-star and the 5-star ones are very good. In particular, they are tailor-made for the event bonus servants like Chiara, Kama and Parvati. If instead you have played the original event, you'll be able to get some mana prism and 1 rare prism. Now let's take a quick overview of the best free quest for this event. There are a total of 8 farming nodes that will be covered in this guide. 5 usual level 90 nodes and 3 new level 90 plus nodes that are introduced in this rerun. These new level 90 plus nodes are on the same floor, have the same material drop and the same enemy class as the 3 usual level 90 single currency nodes. Of course, they will have better drop rates for materials and currency, but also an unusual layout of enemies with very high HPs. So there are very few optimal farming setups available for those level 90 plus nodes. I should also mention that even in the standard level 90 nodes, in the final room of each farming node you will usually find a very high HP mob, at least higher than the numbers that we have been accustomed to. For this reason, DPS with special damage or event bonus damage will be extremely important for optimal farming setups, even for the usual level 90 nodes. You should be able to easily keep track of these best farming nodes by simply keeping track of the floor in which you are in the dungeon. The first floor and the final 5th floor have the best mixed nodes, while the 3 middle floor will have in order the best bronze, silver, gold single currency nodes, both the usual level 90 and the new level 90 plus nodes. As usual, the event is time gated, so these best farming nodes will open up after clearing Act 8 of the main quest. As I previously anticipated, you can see that all the enemies in the best farming nodes are in the 4 horsemen classes, so alter ego DPS like Kiara will be extremely useful for this event. Given the enemy class and layout, the single currency bronze node should be the easiest one to farm, given the optimal refund on caster enemies, followed by the silver node given the plethora of good looping AoE caster servants. The gold node is a bit of a mixed bag. You only have 2 rider enemies in room 1, so refund is strict, but you also have a gacha C that will provide the starting MP charge. A very similar argument can be made for the first mixed node on the first floor of the dungeon. It only has 2 enemies in the first room, but if you have the gold gacha C, you can use it in this one too, enabling the best looping setups. The second mixed node on floor 5 should be easier in my opinion. Yes, with Berserker refund is very strict, but you can also choose your DPS from a very large pool of servants. So chances are that everyone should have a DPS that can work in this node. Regarding the 3 new level 90 plus nodes, here the difficulty lies in the enemy layout, not in the enemy class. For this reason you will see that the silver node is the easiest one, followed by the bronze node, and finally the most difficult one is the gold level 90 plus node. With that said, I'm sure that what you'll find most difficult in this event is not farming the level 90 plus nodes, but clearing the main quest. Forget the 100th floor pagoda or more recently the Artemis Tower from the Amazon event. This dungeon is the real deal. You will have to sit down and watch a ludicrous large amount of loading screen each time you'll move to a new room in this maze. And finally at some point you'll give up and you'll go farming doors for QPs, since your APs will seemingly not end while exploring the maze. Really, the idea of exploring the dungeon is very nice, but the way they implemented it in the game is like torture. The only positive note is that if you choose your CE carefully while exploring the dungeon, you can really save a lot of farming time afterwards. If you don't want to follow a guide on top of all the time you'll waste while exploring the dungeon, you can simply take note of the gacha C equipped to the story supports and place the same gacha C on your other 2 party members. In fact, as I previously said, you'll be able to use only a party of 3 while exploring the dungeon. And again, as I said previously, be sure to use event servants if possible, since with the ludicrous large amount of quest and the very low AP cost, you will be able to farm bond points efficiently even with only alpha party. Let's now move on to the main factor that makes farming composition for this event way different to what we are accustomed to. In fact, for both story quest and free quest, you'll be locked into using this unique mystic code for this event. Just so you know, you will still be able to choose one of your usual mystic codes when forming your party, and that specific mystic code will get the experience when clearing the main quests or farming the free quests. You can use this feature to your advantage by selecting a mystic code that you want to level up, like for example Atlas mystic code, which usually wouldn't have a place in farming setups. By progressing in the main quest of the event, this mystic code will increase in effectiveness, with its skills that will go through 6 different steps. In regards to farming, I have highlighted in red on the screen right now the most important steps for each skill. but please be aware that all my composition will assume that you have fully unlocked this mystic code. It shouldn't be too much of a problem, since you'll be able to unlock it completely after completing Act 9 of the main quest, while the best free quests covered in this guide are unlocked when completing Act 8 of the main quest. So you shouldn't really have to wait too much before you can start farming. Skill 2 is the most straightforward of the bunch, simply being a 50% attack buff, which is available right from the beginning. However, there will be one setup in this guide that will require a fully maxed second skill for its guts effect, which will enable double MP for a rush. Skill 1 will be used for either refund, thanks to the quick and arts resistance down on the enemies, or for extra damage in order to guarantee the kill with MP only in a specific room. Sometimes the extra damage will also be key into enabling the looping, thanks to the overkill mechanic. Finally, skill 3 is the most important one. At max level it will provide a 50% NP charge, and on top of that it will provide a 30% NP damage buff, a 30% NP gain buff, and it will also guarantee the crits for all of your servants by providing you with 50 crit stars. Deciding when to make use of the skills is the key part of all farming setups. Some of them will require these skills on turn 1 for the starting MP charge, but more importantly for that MP gain that will enable some looping setups. By doing so, you will however miss the NP damage buff in room 3 and the ability to finish off the enemies in the final room thanks to the crit stars. That's why you'll see that the most optimal setups will save this skill for turn 3. In my opinion, while this mystic code is very good and packed with a lot of utilities, for veteran master with a large roster of servants, it will feel more as a limitation. In fact, using order change with a specific support would have net you more benefits practically in all cases. Instead, this mystic code will feel very good for newer players, since it will provide them with a plethora of different buffs and more importantly with the juicy 50% MP charge. Since we have seen that there are a total of 8 different farming nodes to choose from when farming, I will now go into details into the efficiency of each farming node. First of all, differently from previous events, all the 8 free quests covered in this guide provide the same amount of experience. Usually that's not the case. The experience provided should increase with the rarity of the currency, be even higher for the mixed nodes, and maxed on the level 90 plus nodes. That's why I usually say that aside event currency efficiency, you can also choose to farm the final mixed nodes over, let's say, the bronze or silver nodes, because it provides more experience points and bond points. That's not the case for this event, so you should really base your decision on their efficiency for the event currencies or for the materials that will have a chance to be dropped in each free quest. Speaking of those materials, none of the usual level 90 nodes will have drop rates better than free quests. Instead, 2 of the new level 90 plus nodes will have drop rates that are barely better than free quest for hearts and mirror. The numbers are nowhere near the level of raids or hunting quest, just barely over the best free quest value, but in any case, if you can run those level 90 plus nodes, it's still an incentive. Now let's take a look to the farming efficiency for the event currencies. Assuming you still need all 3 currencies to clear the event shop, you will need to decide between the 2 mixed node and the 6 single currency nodes. Aside the enemy class and layout, the 2 mixed nodes are equivalent for drop rates, so instead I will divide this section in 2 parts, one for the usual level 90 nodes and the next one for the new level 90 plus nodes. Afterwards, for the final stage of the event, when you only need to farm 2 or less currencies, I will compare the efficiency for the single nodes between level 90 and level 90 plus. Let's start with the usual level 90 single nodes versus mixed nodes. The simple rule is to farm mixed node if you have few gacha seeds, or single nodes if you have a lot of gacha seeds. More precisely, the only reason to farm a single node is using a lot of gacha seeds for that node, but not being able to use all of them while farming the mixed nodes, aka not having good farming setups for those nodes. The mixed nodes for this event are pretty much standard. They are not as good as the two previous events. I'm talking about Fate Requiem collab and the 7th Summer Camp 2022, both of which had very good mixed nodes. So this time, since even free-to-player setup have 3 slots available for Cs, you should only consider farming single nodes if your single drop bonus is 3 or higher. This is of course for the level 90 single nodes. If that's not the case, you can basically skip the next section and move on to the comparison between level 90 plus nodes and mixed nodes. As usual, I will call X the total single drop bonus that you can use for your farming setup. Just count the number of gacha seed that you can use, remembering that maximum broken copies count as 2. Similarly, I will call Y the total mixed drop bonus that you can use for your farming setup for the mixed node. Finally, you can use both the equation above and the graph below to decide which node is better for you. For the equation, multiply your single drop bonus by 2 and then subtract 3. The mixed node is better than the single node AP-wise if your mixed drop bonus is higher than this number that you have just obtained. Otherwise, you can use the graphical method below. Simply draw the points of coordinate x and y on the graph. Starting from 0, you move horizontally as much as your single drop bonus and then move vertically as much as your mixed drop bonus. If the point you have reached is in the blue region above the line, then mixed node is better for you. If instead you are on the line, the two nodes are equivalent to each other. In all other cases, it's the single node that's better. If you need help, there is an example on the screen that should help you understand how to use this method. Finally, in order to summarize into one number the difference in efficiency for the single nodes and the mixed nodes, I will give you this simplified criteria. Assuming you can use all the Cs from the single node even for the mixed node, aka Y is at least X. This should be true if you are a veteran player that can run optimal farming setups for both nodes. Then you can be sure that the mixed node is better than single node AP-wise if the single drop bonus is at most 3. In particular, for this event, when using the same drop bonus in both nodes, the two nodes are equal at a bonus of 3. If you go back and check my farming guide for the 7th Summer Camp 2022 or my farming guide for the Requiem collab, you will see that both of those events have this number at 6, meaning their mixed nodes were extremely better than their single nodes, while instead in this event the mixed node is standard compared to the single nodes. We will now repeat this same analysis, but this time for the level 90 plus single nodes, and we will see how they fare compared to the mixed nodes. Assuming you still need all 3 currencies to clear the event shop, the simple rule is still the same. The mixed nodes are still better if you don't bring with you any gacha C, even if the single level 90 plus nodes are extremely efficient if you can afford a setup to reliably clear them. As I said previously, since even free-to-player setups should have 3 slots available for CE, this time around you should only consider farming the single nodes, the level 90 plus this time, if your single drop bonus is 2 or higher, meaning even without any gacha C of your own, if you can take a maximum broken gacha C from support, then you can consider farming the level 90 plus nodes. So this time around everyone should check the full criteria coming up next. The method is exactly the same as before, so yeah, if you have skipped you'll need to go back and watch it. The result is the equation you can see above or the graph below. Just to be precise, while the graph below is 100% correct, the equation above is instead simplified in order to let you work with simple numbers. If you are interested, this one on the screen right now is the 100% correct equation. But don't worry, the approximation is tiny and you won't see any difference in practice. Same as before, we can summarize the difference in efficiency between the two nodes with a single number by giving this simplified criteria, meaning we assume that you can use all the Cs for the single node even for the mixed node. With this hypothesis, the mixed node is surely better than single node AP-wise if the single drop bonus is at most 1. This number explains what I've said before, precisely that the mixed nodes are pretty standard for this event, while the new level 90 plus nodes are extremely efficient. AKA, with the same drop bonus, you can be sure that the mixed node is better than the single nodes only if your drop bonus is 0 or 1, which in practice should never be the case, since I hope everyone will have at least one whale friend with a Maximilian broken gacha C from supports. So no simplified rule this time, you'll need to check the previous complete rule. This time this number should only be used to make you understand the difference in efficiency between the two nodes. Once you have reached the final stage of the event, when you'll need at most 2 currencies to clear the event shop, then mixed node is out of the question this time around, since it's not that good as with previous events. Instead, you'll need to decide if you want to farm the single currency level 90 nodes or the level 90 plus nodes. The simple rule is to always farm level 90 plus nodes, if you can clear them reliably. More precisely, the only reason to farm a level 90 node is using a lot of gacha C for that node, but not being able to use all of them while farming the level 90 plus node. AKA, you don't have a good farming setup for the level 90 plus, which can be the case for a fair amount of players, as you will see in the final part of this video. As we have just seen in the previous section, the level 90 plus nodes for this event are very good, in order of course to compensate for their unusual layout of enemies, which restrict greatly the number of DPS that can be used to farm them efficiently. So, since even free-to-player setups should at least have 3 slots available for CE, you should only consider farming the usual level 90 nodes if your single drop bonus for them is 5 or higher. If you can't reach that drop bonus, then simply skip the next session and farm the level 90 plus nodes. Of course, if you have the setups to reliably clear them, or if you are fine going the full Zerker Buster route. Again, the method is always the same, but this time we will call X the level 90 drop bonus and Y the level 90 plus drop bonus. Again, as before, to decide between the two nodes, you can use the equation above or the graph below. The graph is 100% accurate, while the equation is this time too simplified in order to keep calculation as simple as possible. Don't worry, this time too you won't see the difference in practice, so you can safely use the simplified equation. Of course, this time around there is no simplified criteria if you have followed the math back in my reasonings. Meaning, if you assume for the level 90 plus node a drop bonus higher or equal than the level 90 node, of course the level 90 plus nodes is always better. AKA, from a geometrical point of view, the first bisector don't intercept the line drawn on the graph below. Before leaving you to the actual farming composition, I will put here the usual farming tips and the assumption that I've used while compiling the farming setups. If you are interested, I've also put the ranking system I've used in order to decide which setup are the best ones for each card type, therefore including them in my following list. And of course, this ranking is also the order I've followed when listing the different farming setups for DPS with the same card type for each farming node. To further help you at the beginning of each section for the different farming nodes, I've also summarized in one page all the DPS with class advantage and event bonus, all the DPS with class advantage and special damage against some of the mobs in those nodes, specifying each time the type of special damage and the number of enemies against which you have that special damage. In the lower part of the screen you will instead find a list of the DPS that will be featured in the following compositions. For the sake of brevity, I've only listed the primary DPS for each card type, together with the free-to-player DPS, for which I've given detailed setups with turn-by-turn skill usage. However, for some setups I've also suggested other DPS that can use that specific setup. In particular, for Buster setups I have divided them based on the MP charge required in order to run that specific setup. Given the event uniqueness with the Forced Mystic Code and the level 90 plus nodes, some setups will be very unusual and unique to this event, so I've written more tips than usual for each farming setups. That's why this time around each one will stay on the screen for 10 seconds instead of the usual 5 seconds. Once you have found a setup that you can use, you can pause the video and check all the information that you may need. That's all for today. I will now leave you to the actual farming compositions. As usual, if you find this type of content useful, please let me know by leaving a like or a comment and by subscribing to the channel. And if you want to be notified when a new farming guide is up, remember to ring my bell. I don't get anything from this channel, so it's only a matter of keeping me motivated to make these farming guides for you in my free time, if you think that they are useful at least. As an alternative, you can also pray for me so that I can get Kama, keeping the hype going for this game. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.